Okay, Val, I'm back. So there's more about Carl Turnquist, his name was. Number 17 is called Funeral Slow. But don't set the sign out on the road that says Funeral Slow. Carl Turnquist came tottering past my place again today with his 2 brown dogs in tow. He stopped by my garden site where the ground had thawed and I was working up a sweat. Leaned on his stick and asked me, "Did you get your seeds for old-time scarlet runners yet?" "No, don't build a long box yet to lay Carl Turnquist and his stick in. My old mile-a-day neighbor is still alive and kickin'." Number 18 is called Trapper. Oh, what was that one going to be? Oh, yes. Had a good friend when I lived in California one time, we'd get together and do writing practice. She wrote lots of poems. And then she had written me and she asked me, what do I write these days? What do I write? Jean Goner wants to know. Ho, ho. I write a snare for a snub-tail hare and a cage for an old black crow. I write a rusty wire fence for 7 wet red cows with slashes of white on their faces. And I write a frayed rope tether for the bold one who trots toward me a dozen paces. I write a net around old Farmer Frank in his slick yellow suit. He flaps his arms in the reins and laughs at his cows while he watches their thoughts try to stir through the axle grease in their brains. That's the end of that one. Number 19, I write. More of the same, I guess. I write a brown cardboard box where 20 new chicks of all colors lounge in a circle around a wide, dusty shade of low-hanging light. So I can remember their fluffy round bums backed up to the heat, and their heads lolling on the bright yellow straw when I sneak into the barn to check them at night. What do I write? I write have-a-heart traps, Jane, for the specimens I'm collecting in my private zoo. Be careful when you're around me. I might be collecting you. Number 20 is called More February Journal. I'm up to February 6th, 98. What can I write in here today? A fat white grub sleeping with its head curled to its toes as I lift a shovel full of wet brown earth. Molasses cookies. Chickens peeping next to a bowl of bread dough that's smooth and puffy on the top. We now have baby chicks under a light in a brown cardboard box on the kitchen counter. The box, after only 1 day, is getting smelly. Should I mention that the package arrived a day late and that 6 of the chicks were dead? Now, one tiny Hamburg chick, white with black spots on its back, is wobbling on its legs and stands with its head hanging down. We may lose that one too. But the white-rumped black one is so lively, it hops up and runs across the backs of the others. The chicks crowd into each other and are always pushing and shoving. There's no chance in a box of chicks for a weak one to stand and wither away. The constant push and shove forces it to keep moving, forces it to try and get strong. This next one's called The Burr-tailed Dog, February 7th. At Frank Killian's Hereford farm, a little black and white border collie joins us. Us is Martha, Hannah, and me. The dog has a long tail bent to one side like a hockey stick that's full of mud, as though the dog has been lying out nights in one of Killian's cow pastures. Spot is the dog's name, Martha tells me, and he isn't a barker. The burr-tailed dog tags along behind us, minding his own business, all the way to Martha's place, a mile, and that's the last we see of him. This is a sunny afternoon in January. Frank Killian's heifers have begun to drop their calves in his hilly green pastures. Next item, number 22, 2 weeks later. Frank Killian was standing by the old wire fence of his bull pasture at the edge of the dirt road where Martha, Hannah, and I were walking. He had a pair of pliers in his hands, and he was tugging at a wad of hair caught on a barb of the barbed wire of the electric fencing. He wore a clean, shiny blue jacket and an old green baseball cap. His lean body seemed to bend backward at the waist, and the green serge trousers he wore were big enough to fit a fatter man. "My dog never came back since he ran off with you," he said to Martha. "But I don't care," he said. "I don't care. I don't want him any more." That's the end of that. Next one is called Another Dog. "I don't reckon..." Oh, this is Martha. "I don't reckon anyone around here would have shot him," Martha said. "Last year Butch shot his little red chow, Cheyenne, after he bit Mary Setzer when she was out a-walking. But no one wouldn't shoot your little Spot. Someone likely is a-feedin' him." "Well," Frank said, "someone can keep him. Someone can keep him. They're welcome to him," he said. "I'll get me another dog that stays home." That's the end of that. Next one's called the Black Bull. The black bull, the one Martha calls Snowball, was standing near the fence, and I could smell his warm breath. The big red bull with the humped-up shoulders, that Martha calls Red Devil, was lying at the feeding place, beside the bull she calls Mr. Ugly, the patchy red and white one. I asked Frank if he had names for his bulls, and he said no. "How many calves you got now?" Martha asked. 10, Frank said, "and another one coming today. I hope the heifer can do it herself, for there's nobody around to help me." Frank Killian. Frank Killian is a bachelor. He lives in the little old white house behind his bull pasture, and he keeps 50 or 60 cows for breeding on the 280 acres his family cleared in the 30s for pasture land and hay fields. Martha told me this. She knows everything. "My tractor got away from me yesterday," Frank said. "I didn't have the emergency all the way on. I came over here to the barn, and when I looked back, there was the tractor going by itself. I thought it was going right through the fence. I went running, but then the motor quit." Frank took us into his little barn while he turned on the fencer, so we could watch the pulsing of the red light and hear the snap of the current. Then Martha and I went on our way. See if I can get another one here. Good neighbors for us. One day in the middle of December, Wilbur and Helen Smith, our up-the-hill neighbors, came to call. They're Mom and Dad's age. Helen wasn't wearing makeup. Her hair had not been to the hairdresser. Her sweatpants were hunter green, like mine. Wilbur's belly was straining at his shirt buttons. Helen and Wilbur told me they're halfbacks. They started out in Minnesota, lived in Florida for 50 years, and then moved here, halfway back, 3 years ago. They told me that Florida got to be too crowded for them. From our house, Helen told me, we could watch the ladies of the night at work and the druggies getting busted. Helen and Wilbur have been around. They've camped in every campsite along the 450 miles of the Blue Ridge Parkway. They've been to Vancouver Island, to Banff, to Nova Scotia, to everywhere in the U.S. They're good neighbors for us. I'll be back.